My name is Ian Bick, and you're tuned in to Locked In with Ian Bick. On this week's episode, I interviewed the Picasso of Counterfeiting, Jeff Turner. We all make mistakes, experience failure, and fall down in life. But if you decide to get back up and use it as fuel to your fire, you could choose to not let it define you. You can make it through to the other side and turn it into an opportunity. Join me, Ian Bick, as I interview people from all over the country who have experienced the rock bottom of the American justice system and find out what they did to overcome it. These are the stories that will motivate you and inspire you to change your life. Jeff Turner, welcome to Locked In.
Thanks for having me.
The Picasso of counterfeiting, as they like to call you online. What a name.
That's what they say.
I'm interested to find out how you got that name on today's interview. In my interviews, I always like to start at the person's beginning. What was your childhood like growing up? What's your family like? Where are you from?
I was born in Sunrise, Florida, just outside of Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. I grew up in like a suburb of Tampa Bay, in Clearwater, Palm Harbor. I had a pretty normal childhood, I think, for the most part. I've got a brother and a sister, kind of like a regular middle class family. Nothing traumatic, nothing, pretty good childhood, really. Played baseball, graduated high school, went to college. I ended up dropping out of college.
What did you go to college for?
Well, the plan was psychology, but yeah, I only went for a couple years before I think partying too much kind of just scratched that.
Now, during high school and college, were you in drugs at all?
Yeah. It was pretty recreational when I was younger, like just smoking weed, partying, kind of drinking. But the harder drugs, like in Florida back when I was in college, is when like the oxys really hit Florida hard. So, I was involved in all that stuff, like doctor shopping and sponsoring people to get pills and all that stuff. And that ended up developing a habit, to say the least.
And when you were growing up, were you getting into any trouble at all in high school or college, like with the law?
A little bit. The first time I got arrested, I was 16. Which it was just like a possession of paraphernalia charge. I was like skipping school. We were at this little skate spot, and like the police ended up showing up, and I had a little weed pipe in my pocket. So I got like a year, I think it was a year probation for that. And kind of because of that, I was holding this pipe for a friend of mine, and I got caught with it. I took the charge. He kind of felt guilty that it was his pipe, and his mom had like Percocets in her medicine cabinet. So, I couldn't smoke weed anymore because I was on probation. So he'd bring me these little Percocets and give them to me before class in high school. So that was kind of the start of taking pills.
But you weren't getting involved in like any major crime or anything like that?
Not when I was younger. I was selling a lot of weed. Started selling coke when I was probably 18 or 19, but nothing on like any major level. Like I wasn't moving kilos or anything.
Now you drop out of college. What are you doing for work? What's your mindset at the time you drop out?
At that point, I didn't have a career really at all. I was basically just getting by selling drugs. That was kind of what I did until I was probably in my like early to mid 20s. I was just working odd jobs, but selling weed and coke and pills to make like supplemental income, basically.
Okay, so then the question is, how does like a low-level drug dealer turn into this major counterfeiting operation? What brings you down that path?
Well, so when I was probably 16, I started counterfeiting driver's licenses. But it wasn't to sell them. It wasn't to make money. It was just kind of, to buy beer. I sold them to some friends of mine. But
how legit were these licenses?
Back then, they weren't very good. But that it kind of made me realize the potential of like what you can counterfeit, basically.
Where do you even get the idea for this? Like at that age, how do you just randomly have like a light bulb go off and say, I want to make fake IDs for my friends?
Well, just like the, wanting to buy alcohol as a minor, really. Which they didn't look very sophisticated, but they worked. So when I was 19, I had, because of like the driver's license thing, I had the idea to counterfeit money. Like I was selling drugs, doing all this crazy shit to make money, when I realized that if I could just figure out a way to print money, that's the best way to do it. Really, if you're trying to make money, you can print your own money. So,
but that's not an easy task to pull off for the average person.
No. And when I first started, when I was younger, they weren't, they looked good. I was able to sell them to a friend of mine. His dad was kind of like a connected guy in Tampa. And he was buying probably $10,000 worth of fake hundreds from me every couple weeks. But, looking back at it, at the time, I thought they looked amazing, but looking back, they didn't look as good as I probably thought back then. And I only did that for like 6 months. I probably sold him maybe like 50 grand over the course of 6 months. So it wasn't like a large sums of money.
But then you progressed to a bigger level?
Well, I stopped. So like my friend ended up overdosing and dying. So he was kind of my connection to sell him to his dad's friend. So when he overdosed, I just basically stopped and went back to, selling drugs or whatever. And then, like, fast forward, I ended up meeting this girl. She had a couple kids from a previous marriage. We got serious. We ended up moving to Knoxville, Tennessee, to kind of, like, just get away from Florida, because Florida is kind of a crazy place, especially back in, like, the mid-2000s when all the pills were everywhere and stuff.
And how old are you at this time?
Probably 23, 24, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So we moved to Knoxville, and that's when I got into the sign industry. So I started like, doing sign installs and service, and through that I got into graphic design, and kind of like, the whole graphic design aspect. And that I realized the potential of graphic design with the counterfeiting thing, because I learned graphic design more.
So you're able to bring it to like a professional level.
Yeah, they ended up, I knew like I could do a lot more with it, but I was making good money in the sign industry. And I ended up marrying the girl. We had a couple kids of our own. So I stopped selling drugs. I lived a pretty normal life for a while.
But what changed? Like, what triggered you to move on from like this normal lifestyle to getting into, a life of counterfeiting?
Well, through all that, I was still like addicted to drugs. I was doing pills. But I've always been like a functioning addict. I, raised my kids.
A functioning addict?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I paid my rent, went to work, raised my family, but I ended up, like wrecking a bucket truck. I had a newborn baby, so I wasn't getting any sleep. I ended up falling asleep at the wheel. I wasn't even on drugs at the time either. Like I was just tired, fell asleep, and wrecked the truck. So my boss fired me for it.
It was a company truck?
Yeah. It was a big bucket truck with like $1 million worth of sign parts in it and all this crazy shit. But so like at that point, I found myself in a situation to where the lease was up in my house. Like I had a newborn baby, I had other kids, I was married at this point. Our lease was up. We were renting a house. Our lease was up in a couple months, and I got laid off from my job. So I basically was just like screwed financially. I was getting by pretty well, making decent money, but I was living paycheck to paycheck for the most part. So at that point, I kind of thought back to the counterfeiting thing. Like I was in a bad financial situation.
You go back to what your roots were.
Yeah, I mean, I needed to make a lot of money quick.
Do you think had you not been on drugs at the time, you would have maybe went a more legit route and it wouldn't have popped in your mind to go back to something illegal?
Probably. Because, I mean, at this point, like I said, I lost my job. The lease was almost up in my house. I had probably a $200 a day habit just doing pills at that point. And, so basically within those 2 months before the lease was up, I started just like editing these images. So like you can't scan a picture of $100 bill. Like the scanner will recognize it, and it like won't allow you to edit it or print it or anything like that. So I basically took like a photo of the bill, uploaded it, downloaded specific software that allowed me to edit it. And, I broke down the images into multiple different layers. So the printer wouldn't recognize it when I printed it because it was printed in four different layers. And, just experimenting with stuff, I found like that Bible paper was thin enough to sandwich 2 sheets together.
And no one had ever thought of using Bible paper before?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I've never heard of it. I just kind of stumbled across it, and it worked significantly well.
Now, how long does it take you to print the money? Is it like one piece of paper at a time, or are you printing like boatloads of money?
No, it was basically one piece at a time.
And this is just a $100 bill?
Yeah. Well, I started printing 20s at first to just sell to this drug dealer friend of mine. Like I was selling him 20s while I was kind of editing the images for the hundreds.
Okay.
But it didn't take long for me to finish all the images for the $100 bill and start printing those. But I printed one at a time, but you can print them pretty quick because I had multiple printers, and I would print them in cycles. So like I'd print like just the background color on one printer, and while 10 of those were printing, I'd take the next 10 and print, all the black work and treasury seals and serial numbers.
How legit is this money? Like, does it hold up under all like scrutiny? If you're going to the bank, can you go to a bank teller and give them these $100 bills?
So, I mean, they looked pretty much perfect.
You hold them up to the light, it passes it.
Yeah, see, that's the good thing about the Bible paper is most paper is bleached when in the manufacturing process. For some reason, the specific types of Bible paper I was using isn't. So it when you put a black light on it, it glows a dull purple, just like money does. And most paper has starch in it, whereas money doesn't. So the counterfeit detection pens react to most papers and turn black. But I would coat, after I printed the bills, I'd spray a matte lacquer spray on it so the counterfeit pens wouldn't react with the starch in the paper. So yeah, basically holding my bills up to the light, they had strips and watermarks. It glowed properly in a black light. They marked with a pen. I used an iridescent green eyeshadow to take the pigment from it to make my own color shifting ink.
How long did it take you to get to this level? Like you went from just this small little, operation, you printing $20 bills, to moving on to hundreds that are very legitimate. How long did it take?
I'd say probably within 6 months. Because they progressively got better and faster. So like the more you do it, you just get the system down and you can print them, a lot faster. So at first I was probably printing only like a few $100 bills a day just to like kind of get by. But then as I would spend them and they all like worked, because at first you're nervous to go break a bill or whatever, you know what I mean? But like every single one passed with no problem at all.
Do you think if you had gotten caught with like those first couple bills, it would have deterred you and you would have stopped? Or do you think that would have just motivated you to try to improve on your skill?
If I did like get caught, I mean, yeah, it would probably deter me, or I'd just sell them to drug dealers. But once I was able to spend them, and they all worked so easily, like I just kind of went balls to the wall spending them myself. I was selling them to drug dealers too, but yeah, I was probably spending anywhere from a couple thousand to 5,000 a day just spending on myself.
As a counterfeiter, the business aspect of it is you're both using the fake bills and you're selling them to other people.
Yeah.
Do you sell them at their face value, or there's a cut and they know it's a fake bill?
Well, I'd sell them for about 25% of their face value.
So if I want $100 bill from you, I'm a drug dealer, I come to you and say, here's $25. And
yeah, basically. Most people would buy anywhere from like $1,000 to $10,000 worth of fake bills. And how usually I'd rip off these heroin dealers with the fake money. I'd go buy drugs from them with this fake money. And when they eventually found out that the bills were fake, they'd either be pissed off and I'd just avoid their phone calls, or they'd want to buy them from me. You know what I mean? Because most of these dealers, like, I'd get them for $500 a day. I'd buy $500 worth of dope from them a day. And after a few weeks or a month, they found out that they were fake, but all the bills I'd given them, they were able to spend and re-up with, or, whatever. So, like, they really weren't out any money.
Well, on that topic, as someone that was a user yourself, and you're also a counterfeiter, and you're giving dealers and could be potentially dangerous people fake bills, are there any dangerous situations you're put in because of that?
I mean, definitely. I was pretty good about, when somebody found out that I was ripping them off for thousands of dollars, I'd usually just avoid those people. So, like, nothing ever really came to a head. One of the guy that actually ended up setting me up, we did a lot of business with each other before he set me up, but he found out that they were fake because I probably was ripping them off for like $10,000 worth over the course of a month. And then I guess one of the bills was in his pocket and it was raining, so the color shifting ink I used got wet and smeared off. So basically I went home one day and he was like in my driveway yelling at my roommate, pissed off about the bills. But eventually it basically, I found out that he wasn't really mad. He just wanted to know, where this girl was getting them. So I ended up basically just selling them to him. And he was buying like $10,000 every time he'd go up to Cleveland to pick up his like brick of heroin or whatever.
What's the biggest purchase you made for like goods or items with counterfeit money?
Not very much, because my thing was, I wouldn't go buy a car with all fake hundreds, but I'd try to just spend, I think the most was probably like $500 worth of like a money order for $500, but I'd hit up multiple places. So like we'd go to, say Atlanta for the week and just hit up every business in Atlanta. Or at least there are certain stores that, only like, for instance, CVS pharmacies, they've got the counterfeit pen with a black light on it. Whereas Walgreens just has a counterfeit pen. They just mark it. So like different stores have their own techniques of detecting counterfeit bills. So like, I would avoid certain stores that had like the bill validator machines, and go to other like certain corporations that only marked it with the pen or had the black light or whatever. So we'd go to a city for like a week and hit up all Dollar General, Walmart, supermarkets, grocery stores, types,
Do you wear like a disguise or anything?
Not really. I mean, I would try to dress a little different. I'd maybe like grow a beard for a little bit, shave it off, grow a goatee kind of thing. But
it's got to be nerve-wracking, like going up to the counter and not knowing if that money's going to pass or not. Like, were you ever in a situation where it didn't pass, or did it just pass every single time?
There was a couple cases where there was an issue, but it was mainly because I would go to, like, in Knoxville where I was living at the time. I'd go to a store multiple times. And eventually they found out that the bills were fake and then were looking for them. And if I went to a store 10 times over the course of, say, 2 weeks, the last, few times I went there would start to get sketchy because but like one grocery store I went to, the cashier told me, like, I broke $100 bill with this girl. And then like a few days later, a week later, I went back and it was the same cashier. And she, like, even said, she was like marking it with the pen and then holding it up and looking for the strip and marking it again and all this. And she said to me, like, oh, I just received a counterfeit bill, so I'm just double checking everything. But she still accepted it. But that, after stuff like that, I just wouldn't go back to that store again. You know what I mean?
At your peak, how much money are you raking in yourself personally from this enterprise?
It really depends because, like, I was probably spending myself at least $2,000 a day.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it was all right. But it also depends because, like, these drug dealers I was dealing with, they're, like, from Detroit and Cleveland and Atlanta and Chicago, but they were selling dope in Knoxville. So, like, once a month, they'd go back to Detroit, say, and pick up, like, a kilo of heroin and then come back to Knoxville and sell it. So once a month, they'd want $5,000 of my fake bills to go re-up with. And they were ripping off their drug dealers. So, like, I had probably 10 people I was doing that with, but whatever their schedule was like as far as re-upping, that's when I made another, nice chunk of money. But I'd say on average, I was spending like $2,500 a day. And then maybe once a week, one of the guys would want 10 grand, so I'd get another 2,500 by selling him the 10.
How long is this going on for before you get caught?
It was about 2 years.
And how do you end up getting caught?
So that dealer from Cleveland, Ohio, he found out the bills were fake. He wanted to start buying them from me, so I was selling him 10,000 maybe once a month. Basically, one time he went up to Cleveland to re-up, and so he bought a car from some like junkie he was selling dope to. He had the title for it, so he didn't know it was stolen or anything, but he went up to Cleveland to re-up in this car, and it ended up being stolen. So he got pulled over, and he had like 20,000 in real cash and 5,000 of my fake bills. He hadn't re-upped yet, but he had a bag full of money. So, obviously the police is this like young 25-year-old black kid that looks like a drug dealer and has a bag full of money in a stolen car. So they obviously arrest him. They seize the money. They interrogate him. The police didn't even know the money was fake, but they seize it as drug money, so they deposit it in the bank. And then, like, a couple days later, the bank comes back to the police and says that 5,000 of this money's fake. So then the Secret Service get involved.
How long are they investigating this whole thing?
Well, they didn't know who I was, but as soon as the first bills, hit the bank and they discovered that they were fake, they knew about me, but they just didn't know who I was.
Is that like a decent amount of fake money for them to get on their radar?
Oh yeah, I'd say so. I don't even know the total number that I spent. Like, last I heard from the Secret Service, it was like roughly around 400,000, but they said they were still finding like 10,000 a week at that point. And that's when I ended up making a plea deal, so I just stopped,
And you're just doing this all in like your basement?
No, well, I was traveling. They said in my paperwork it was a mobile counterfeiting lab or something fucking like that, but no, I was living at a hotel, so I had...
You're just printing all this fake money out of the hotel?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I'd rent a house for a couple months and then, just get rid of it and go travel again. So it was mainly living out of hotels. I think we rented a couple houses a couple different times.
How long does it take for the Secret Service to figure out that you're the Picasso of counterfeiting?
Well, until the guy told him my name in the interrogation.
He folded pretty quick?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I've got the tapes of the interrogation and my discovery. And so, like, he was up in Cleveland, and he basically told the Secret Service that he could come down to Knoxville and set me up. So the Cleveland branch of the Secret Service made a deal with him and said, okay, we'll take you down to Knoxville, you set up this counterfeiter, and we won't press charges on you for the counterfeit money. So he did that. The Secret Service from Cleveland, Ohio, came down to Knoxville. They set me up. Obviously, the Knoxville branch of the Secret Service got involved, along with like the Organized Crime Unit, Drug Task Force, KPD.
They catch you red-handed.
Yeah, pretty much. See, he tried to set me up. He asked me to get him 700 grams of heroin. Like, I wasn't really selling that much drugs, but I knew a lot of like big-time drug dealers. So he was asking me to like middleman him almost a kilo to get it for him. And luckily, I got like tipped off by one of his runners that he got arrested up in Cleveland. So I already knew, pretty much, I suspected that he was cooperating.
But you still wanted to try it with the fake money?
Well, I mean, no, at that point, he was trying to... So, like, one of his runners warned me that he got arrested up in Cleveland. So I wasn't trying to talk with him over the phone or do any business or anything, but after even answering his phone call, they GPS pinged my phone to my location, and basically waited. They knew which hotel I was at, but they didn't know which room I was in. So I guess and they knew the make and model of my car, so they waited in the parking lot until my wife left the hotel room to go shopping, and then they pulled her over, arrested her, found the hotel room key, kicked the door in, and I was in there making, I think it was like $6,400.
So the Secret Service bounces into your hotel room, and then they just see this fake money in your whole operating system?
Yeah, pretty much. I was printing $6,400 for these Detroit drug dealers I knew at the time.
Wow.
When they kicked the door in, yeah.
Do you get arrested? Do you get bond?
No. I got pretrial release. Like they tried to fight it, saying I was a flight risk because, I was from Florida but living in Knoxville, living at hotels. I got set up by a drug dealer in Cleveland, Ohio. They knew I was dealing with dealers in Detroit and Atlanta, so like they were basically saying I was a flight risk, but my lawyer fought it and ended up getting pretrial.
What's your family's reaction to your arrest?
I don't think they were too surprised, but I mean, maybe they were. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I've been getting into trouble here and there for a long time. So
now, how long is the criminal justice process for you? And do you take a deal? Do you go to trial? What's going on post-arrest for you?
So it took a long time because I got out on pretrial. And like they basically said, you got to go to rehab and you have to go to a halfway house until, on pretrial release, you say you're going to take it to trial. Even though I had no intention of actually taking it to trial. I was just, trying to get out on pretrial release. So, but they said, go to rehab and stay in a halfway house. So I did that, but then COVID hit. So all the courts were closed. So everything got prolonged like an extra year. So I was out on pretrial release for like 18 months until I finally, submitted the change of plea, pled guilty.
What did you plead guilty to?
It was, the original indictment was, it was conspiracy to counterfeit U.S. obligations, sale and manufacture of counterfeit U.S. obligations, and then like a couple counts of uttering counterfeit bills. But the plea deal was basically, they said, if you plead guilty, we won't charge your wife with anything. We'll keep the amount like restitution amount and like all that under $100,000, which avoids an enhancement. And they wanted me to make a training video for Secret Service agents, like explaining my process.
Did you make a Secret Service training?
Yeah, they gave me cooperation credit for basically going through my process, just telling them how I learned everything. So like I was counterfeiting the strips on the Blue Note bills. Like I found that out from Google Patents, actually. So like the company that is contracted by the government to make the paper and security features is called Crane and Company, Crane Currency. And they patented that blue strip. It's called Motion. It's called fly eye lenticular lens arrays. It's like this specific type of lenticular technology basically by reading the patent, I learned how to replicate the 3D security ribbons. So I explained all that to the Secret Service on the video, made a couple bills. They had all my printers and everything because they kicked in my hotel room door while I was making bills. So they had all the evidence out, and I made a couple bills for them on camera, explained, how I learned everything and the whole process.
But you didn't have to testify against anyone else, just make the video for them.
The only co-conspirator on my case was the guy that set me up.
And he got probably a sweet deal then.
Well, actually, he probably would have, but once he set me up, they let him go as an informant. But then he disappeared on them and got another charge and got caught with like a kilo of heroin, a kilo of meth, and a handgun after he was cooperating with them. So
had you never gotten that tip, your life could be very different now if you got caught with those drugs.
Well, I mean,
do you ever put that into perspective?
If I would have accepted he was trying to get me to get him 700 grams of heroin. Yeah. If I would have agreed to that over the phone, I would.
Yeah.
Heroin conspiracies, at least 5 years in prison, probably 10.
How much time do you end up getting sentenced to because of this counterfeiting business?
I got the range of my sentence was 10 to 16 months, and they gave me the low end of 10 months.
And you had no really major criminal history going into this?
No. The only charges I had as an adult were adjudication withheld before this. So my criminal history was a 0 to 1.
Do you have any restitution that you have to pay back to maybe vendors or anything that you gave fake money to?
Yeah, it's $100,000 I have to pay.
How do they come up with that figure? Like if you're putting fake money of $400,000 on the streets, why is it only $100,000?
I think that was the Secret Service. That was part of their plea agreement. The enhancements. You get an enhancement over $100,000 and an enhancement at over $1 million. That was kind of like just their deal they gave me. If I pled guilty and showed them, how I did everything, they'd keep it under 100,000. So the number ended up being like 96,800 or something. So
for all the shit you were doing, you got a pretty good deal. 10 months in federal prison. I'm assuming you went to a camp?
Well, I was supposed to self-surrender to a camp, but I ended up basically getting arrested again before I could self-surrender, and it bumped my level up to a low. But
what did you get arrested for?
It was possession of heroin.
Now you were still addicted at this point?
Well, no, actually. I was sober. I think once they sentenced me, I just kind of had like a week or two of saying, fuck it, and I relapsed. But yeah, I've been out of prison for over a year. And I've got 2.5 years clean since then.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. And how old are you now?
I'm 36.
36. So you get out of prison. What was your prison experience like? It's only 10 months, so it wasn't too much time. But overall, how do you think prison was for you?
Yeah, it wasn't. For me personally, it was like a positive experience, I guess you could say. Just in the fact that it got me sober.
You think it gave you like a new mindset, new outlook on life?
Yeah, definitely. If I wouldn't have gotten caught and arrested and went to prison, I probably wouldn't have gotten sober. You know what I mean?
Were your parents supportive while you were in prison?
I mean, they always support what I do, as long as it's positive. They supported me for the most part, and my whole family is pretty happy now that I'm, doing better than than I have been in the past.
It's always interesting to think that it's our worst moments in life that have the ability to change us for the better. I mean, it doesn't always happen in every case, but you do have those cases. Like in your case, had you never counterfeited the money, had you never went to prison, you might not be clean to this day. You could be dead to this day from an overdose of drugs.
For sure.
It just puts life into perspective.
Yeah, I mean, really everything worked out as best as it could. I was doing 3 grams of fentanyl a day, ripping off heroin dealers and, living a pretty crazy life.
What do you do when you get out of prison? What's your new game plan? Is there any inclination to get back into what you were doing before?
Oh, no. The opportunities I've gotten since I've been out are amazing, really. I'm running production at a print shop. I'm writing a book telling my story. I've optioned the rights to my story to a film company. So they're trying to make that work. It's in development now. I'm not sure, what's going to happen with the movie thing, but it'd be pretty cool if they make a movie about it.
Well, you got the story for it.
Well, let's hope it works out,
Do you ever get inclinations to use drugs or alcohol?
No, not anymore. I really didn't even, when the last time I relapsed, I don't even know what, it was just a stupid fluke. I didn't even necessarily want to. It was just kind of they sentenced me and I knew I was turning myself into prison in a couple weeks. So it was just kind of it was a stupid decision, but I'm much happier now being sober. Really. And even when I was on drugs, I was physically addicted, so I just kept going with this. I've been wanting to get off opiates for 10 years, you know what I mean? But it was just hard with, kids and a job. It's hard to go a month dope sick, when I had responsibilities and stuff.
Do you feel changes in your physical body in a way, going from being addicted to drugs now being completely clean? You see some people that use drugs, they go through severe physical changes.
I mean, I'd say I'm healthier now than I've been in a long time, for sure. Being physically addicted to heroin, opiates, all that stuff is really horrible for your body. I never used needles or anything. I just snorted it, but still has horrible negative effects. Snorting that much heroin on a daily basis is not good.
What have you learned through this whole process? What are your takeaways from, committing the crime, getting caught, the post-trial or the pre-trial experience, and then going to prison and now out of prison? What's your biggest learning lesson you've taken away from all of that?
I mean, really, I feel like doing the right thing, the karma is real, you know what I mean? If you really just do the right thing and make positive choices, it seems that, things are much better. Things just work out if you do the right thing. Because even when I was I might make a lot of money doing this crazy shit I was doing, but obviously everything catches up with you. You know what I mean? Not only did I get arrested, but you have to pay back money. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, making the right choice and just doing positive things with your life is always going to be better, for sure.
Was it hard to disassociate yourself with the group of people you were hanging out with pre-prison? You had to create a whole new lifestyle, essentially, get away from the drug users, the drug dealers, anyone involved in crime.
Yeah, for sure. I'm starting over from completely my whole life, really. They seized all the money and cars, everything, You know, I got out of prison. My wife and I are separated. So, you know, I'm just starting everything over from scratch, basically.
Are you more cautious about who you spend your time with? Like, I know now for me, I'm very careful of who I let into my life now, especially as I'm like on the rise and doing things that kind of resemble my past in a way. And I'm very cautious of, okay, what are their intentions? What can they bring to the table? Do you have those thoughts going through your mind?
I mean, yeah, definitely. Like, I don't, at this point in my life, like, I don't hang out with anybody, really. I go to work and, you know what I mean? I just do what needs to be done, you know what I mean? I don't do anything else. I don't, like, go hang out or go to bars or anything like that. So, yeah, I'm just trying to start everything over. You know what I mean? I've got a good job, but I'm working like 65 hours a week. I'm writing this book. I'm traveling for podcasts and stuff, probably once a month. So,
what's your message? Like, what's your hope to get out by doing these podcasts, by doing a possible movie, writing the book? What's your plan?
Really, I don't have a plan. It's kind of just all fell into my lap, really. I just did one podcast telling my story, and it got a lot of views, and a bunch of other people have reached out to me. So I'm just kind of going with the flow of things as regarding that. I mean, I've got a goal to finish writing this book, that's a long process, especially with like my schedule, how it is now. It's like I'm trying to squeeze in writing a couple paragraphs a night type thing, if I'm lucky. So, you know, I want to finish the book, but everything else is just kind of going with the flow of it, man.
That's great, man. I mean, you really do have a cautionary tale for a lot of people too, because like you lived a pretty, you know, crazy lifestyle. Printing fake money is definitely not the norm of crimes that people commit that when they're on drugs. And I'm sure there was like that thrilling part of it, like having all this money and being able to kind of like be on the top of your own world. I remember for me, like doing the concerts and the nightclubs and stuff, like that was a fuel, and that, you know, led to other not so good decisions. So now here you are, post crime, post prison, post drug addiction, and you have a good story to tell. And, you know, I wish you the best with that. I hope they make it into the movie. I'll definitely watch the movie on that. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen like a counterfeiting movie. You see it on TV shows, but I haven't really seen a full movie. Yeah. And I hope you just, you know, keep being that message to others about what can happen if they do get their life on track. So, you know, thanks for coming on Locked In, Jeff. It's been a pleasure, and, you know, hope to see you again soon.
Cool. Appreciate it, man.